請各位繼續站立，等行政長。
Members, will please remain standing for the Chief Executive. Chief Executive. The Chief Executive will first address the Council. Chief Executive. Madam President, on the 24th of this month, I was sworn in as the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. And as in my capacity as Chief Executive, I'm now here for the Q&A session for the first time, so please do bear with me. I take the first opportunity to meet members because first I want to thank members for their support, and also I would like to show my sincerity and determination to maintain good ExCo and LegCo relationship and to maintain good communication with LegCo. In the recent past, I've been mulling over the way to good governance and how can the powers that be win the trust of the people. Having reviewed and taking stock the political situation in Hong Kong, having listened to various opinions, I've come to a conclusion, and that is the ExCo and LegCo must have the well-being of the general public uppermost in their mind. They have to respond to popular opinions. They have to be mutually accommodating in the spirit of communication before we can establish good governance. This is the basis for stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. Only then can the powers that be win the trust and admiration of the public. On the contrary, if we engage in constant wrangling, it would not only hamper the effective governance, the LegCo cannot seek the well-being of the members of the public. Years of political wrangling has resulted in political attrition. The governance was mired in difficulty. The public's faith in the LegCo and political parties remain low, and people lose confidence in us. And this is a saddening situation. United, we stand to gain. Divided, it is mutually damaging. I hope that we can right the past wrongs. The purpose of my speaking here today is to set out my views in relation to how to build a good ExCo and LegCo relationship. One of the reasons of the political wrangling is a lack of mutual trust between the two bodies. They have their own political agenda. Who's right and who's wrong? In taking part in the election of the Chief Executive, I set out my political agenda, and it is a people-based governance. We should, with sincerity, with pragmatic attitude, respond to public opinions and public feelings and how they aspire about the future. The CPU has been analyzing the public opinions in order to help the government to get to grips with public opinions. The public opinion findings show that after April 2004, people's overriding concerns have been stability, followed by prosperity, followed by freedoms, and followed by democracy. 60% of people want stability and prosperity.
In terms of social issues, according to a survey done in mid-April this year, the public were most concerned with economy, 50%, and then livelihood issues, 30%, and then political and environment issues, and these together made up 10%. In terms of public policies, in another survey conducted near the end of April, this year. Among 25 policy issues, the 11 that the public were most concerned with were from 1 to 10. 1, to increase employment opportunities and to alleviate unemployment. 2, to improve governance. 3, to improve air quality. 4, to reform the public medical delivery system. Number 5, poverty. Number 6, to improve the relationship between the executive and the legislature. Number 7, to implement small class teaching in primary schools. Number 8, to reform the CSSA system. Number 9, urban renewal. And number 10, to implement central slaughtering of poultry and to put in a mechanism to increase and decrease bus fares. What is more controversial is legislating for Article 23 that ranked number 18 and universal suffrage that ranked number 13. So it is obvious that the public were most concerned with livelihood and the economy. These surveys were commissioned by us with an independent university, and it is an independent body, and 1,200 respondents gave their replies. I believe any survey would come back with the same kind of results. If you doubt the accuracy of such surveys, your own surveys are welcome and you will find the same results. Therefore, my policy agenda is built on the public opinion collected. The same priorities would be according to what I read out from the survey results. A people-based governance is the spirit of my entire policy agenda. I would try to build a harmonious society, and I would concentrate my energy on economic and livelihood issues in order to really respond to the wishes of the public. I'm very happy to know that this policy agenda has been supported by most of the people in Hong Kong and also the central authorities. They are of the view that these are in line with the actual interests and expectations of the Hong Kong people and Hong Kong's situation at the present moment. The saying goes, a walk of 1,000 miles begins under your feet. My colleagues and I agree that with the support of all the people in Hong Kong, our business of working for the interests of the people of Hong Kong has a sound foundation and has a premise for success. In order to deliver what I promised, I think I have already got the necessary conditions, and I would need your support. Without your support, my governance will not be able to deliver. So I invite all of you here to join us in our business in working for the interest and benefit of the entire community, and so that this policy agenda, which is built on public opinion, will be our common goal. I understand that between me and some councillors, there are differences in mentality and philosophies, and because of historical legacies, there is this barrier between us. But I do firmly believe that with one country, two systems as the basis, if we sincerely work for the interests of Hong Kong people, we have the same mission and the same goal. If we place the good of the country and Hong Kong before ourselves, we would live with the differences and we would argue less, we would have more consensus, so that we will work and contribute towards the common good of Hong Kong, and then together we will gain the trust and respect of the Hong Kong public. In the coming few months, I will be liaising with different members of the council, and I would like to hear from you your views with regard to the policy address to be delivered in October, so that I can improve my policy agenda. But as I said, the policy agenda seeks to reflect public opinion, so that we can have your utmost support in the days to come. I now welcome questions.
Chamber, please remain standing members. Chief Executive. The Chief Executive will now answer questions raised by members A member whose question has been answered may, if necessary or for the purpose of elucidation only, ask a short follow-up question. Ms. Li Fongying. Thank you, Madam President. Congratulations, Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang has been spending a long time with the civil service. Many people pin high hope on you, Mr. Zhang. I mean, the civil servants, they hope that you would understand their sentiments. What specific policies do you have in mind to improve the relationship between the government and your administration and the civil service? CE. Well, the civil service is a sound and sophisticated system, and the civil servants are discharging their duties professionally. The administration handles the issues in a rational manner according to established policies. As far as civil servants are concerned, the Civil Service Bureau discusses with the civil servants about the terms and conditions, the perks, and so on. And these procedures would continue to prevail. I am convinced that what the civil servants want are for the administration to discuss with them in a rational manner in accordance with established procedures. I'm sure the relationship will continue to be good. Ms. Li. Mr. Zhang, the CFA is sitting in judgment over the pay dispute. Will you give the undertaking to the civil servants that whatever the outcome of the CFA case, the government would not seek any alternative means to resolve the problem, work in accordance with their verdict? Well, it's not for me to talk about the court case because it is still sub judice. I would respect the decisions of the court, but we have to consider the court's decision before we consider the next step. I'm sure that the civil servants are very concerned about this, so are the SAR administration. Whatever we do would be in a rational manner. Mr. Chen Kan Nam. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Zhang, first of all, I congratulate you on being appointed as Chief Executive. You said that there was wrangling between the ExCo and LegCo. I think one of the LegCo members has done something which brought shame to the whole LegCo. Over the past 8 years, Hong Kong faced economic restructuring. The middle-class people suffered a great deal of unprecedented damage. I'm sure that the middle-class people pin very high hope on Mr. Zhang. You talked about the development of economy and creation of a harmonious society. I'm sure that this is also the opinions of the middle class. Other than helping the disadvantaged, the underprivileged, I hope that you would also mentions made by the middle class to Hong Kong. They should be given the fair share of attention. Mr. Zhang, in the days ahead, how are you going to listen to the sentiments of the middle class? Thank you. The middle class, the professionals, when we formulate policies, when we restructure the systems, the views are going to be very important. As I said in my platform, I refer to the restructuring of the advisory bodies ranging from the Commission on Strategic Development and also the ExCo. In the process of restructuring, I hope that we can absorb more middle-class people, in particular the professionals, in such a way that the decisions taken would be able to reflect the views of these people. The Home Affairs Department does have discussion groups. I hope that this network can be expanded to cover more middle-class people. The strategies that we have in place, I hope that would be embraced by more of the middle class. And I hope that they would appreciate that these policies will represent their general interests. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Mr. Zhang, recently you talked about the personal assistance to bureau secretaries. Is it intended to give an opportunity to the middle class to take part in politics? Well, this is not directly related. I'm sure the government officials or even the personal assistants of bureau secretaries would be representative of the middle class. In the report number 2, when I talked about the political talents for the next generation, the development of political parties, and these are the issues that we have to face in order to have a sustainable political system. There are many people taking part in politics, in the community, in the advisory body, in LegCo. Their experience is going to be very important. But if they can have some exposure in the government, that would be able to reduce the risk of them taking part in politics. If people, young people in particular, can be given opportunity to have some attachment in the government, it would be a good idea. They can come from the civil service. They can come from the policy concern groups, the professionals or the academics. I hope that I would get their support. What I hope to achieve is to be able to nurture the second generation of politicians. It's not the case that the civil service can dominate all these people. I hope that we can draw these people from the middle class. Mr. Lau Wang-Fat. Madam President, Mr. Zhang, you said that you wanted to create a harmonious society. You're going to be having a people-based governance. The 18 district councils have 500 or so district councillors. They can play a more active role in this process. Will you seek to expand the functions of the district councils, and will you give more support for the district councillors so the district administration would be developed in a way which is in line with your thinking? Thank you.
The district councils are dynamic and growing. They should not stay at the same level. As to expanding them and giving them other roles and also the pace for that, that would depend on discussion between ourselves. And we also have to look at the allocation of resources. Mr. Lau, you have a lot of knowledge in this respect. Perhaps we can have more communication afterwards. And also in my 2 years tenure, let me know from you what you think can be accomplished. Mr. Jasper Zhang. Madam President and the Chief Executive, in your introductory remarks, you said that there would be a policy address in October, so you will be presenting the policy address in October. And this was made known to us the first time through media reports during Pain. As the chairman of the LegCo's Committee on Rules of Procedure, we said that might be we want to look at it because in the past 3 years we had the policy address in January. So is our understanding correct that you are telling the LegCo now that in October you will be presenting your policy address? Because I want to know exactly whether it is going to be in October and January, and what are the pros and cons between the two kinds of timing. Why do you choose October, and would that be there to stay? In other words, that within your tenure you would have the policy address in October? During my election campaign, I already set out this idea very clearly, and I'm telling you the same today. This morning, I told the Director of Administration the same thing, to inform the LegCo formally of my wish. And that is, after the summer recess in your new session, I would like to read out the policy address in the first meeting in October. This is not just my personal wish. I believe this represents the wishes and views expressed by electrical members in the past. Now, I think there are advantages and disadvantages for doing either. You know them very well, and I will not repeat them here. But which timing is better suited to your needs? I believe what I have decided on would get your support. The important reason is that I would only be in the post for 2 years, and I would very much like to tell members exactly what I intend to do within my tenure as soon as possible, and I would do it in the first available opportunity. Now, today we cannot do it yet because I have to talk to my principal officials, but I hope that after the summer recess, I will be able to let you have the policy address. And also, next year, again, the policy address will be delivered in October. In other words, during my tenure, I intend to read out the policy address in October. As to the future, it will be up to the next chief executive. Ms. Emily Lau. Madam President, I am very happy that the chief executive is here at a question and answer session so soon. I hope you will come more often than Mr. Tong. A few days away, it will be the 1st of July. I hope that a big crowd would appear in the streets to fight for universal suffrage. You said that near the end of April, you conducted a survey, and you found that those who wanted universal suffrage only came 13. In other words, that was only the 13th wish of the people. Do you remember last year when the central authorities vetoed universal suffrage, there were so many people on the streets? Are you saying that many of those who marched last year have changed their tack? In other words, they do not want universal suffrage for Hong Kong anymore? And would you also relate our wishes to the central authorities? I was only telling you the findings of a survey. I was not telling you my personal view, so I was only reading out the findings, and I told you the ranking of universal suffrage in that survey. With regard to the July 1st march last year, yes, many people expressed their views. Maybe they were marching for the economy, for stability. At that time, our economy shrank and the property market plunged, and there were SARS, there were unemployment, and perhaps there were governance problems as well. Plus, Article 23, there were so many things, and therefore many people had grievances. I do believe that the survey was an objective portrait of facts, but it is up to individual members of the public to decide to march on the 1st of July. And I would not make any proposals for that here. But I believe this year people would feel more comfortable and they feel better. Now, if they still would like to express their views on the 1st of July by marching, it is up to them. I believe the central authorities know the wishes of Hong Kong people very well. And whenever there is an occasion, I would always tell the central authorities what the wishes of Hong Kong people are, including the wishes for democracy, and I will continue to do that. The CE might have mixed up the two marches. Last year, the march only had one theme, and that is to strive for 0708 universal suffrage. Maybe somebody marched last year because of the economy, but then the theme was really only on universal suffrage. And of course, in 2003, the march was about something else. But it doesn't matter. Is the CE saying that many people have changed tack? In other words, the 500,000 people who marched last year no longer support universal suffrage? And also, would you do an independence survey amongst Hong Kong people and ask them only one question? Do they want universal suffrage, so that you know? And also, with regard to your Beijing trip last week, did you fight for universal suffrage with the central authorities? Well, I was in Beijing to accept appointment, and I did not mention the issue of 0708 universal suffrage. According to the NPCSC decision last April, or actually April 2004, universal suffrage would not be an option for 07-08, so I did not mention it in my last trip to Beijing. I'm not saying that Hong Kong people have changed their stance. Hong Kong people know what they want, and I'm only trying to impart a message. If Hong Kong people are unhappy, they have many ways to express their unhappiness, and taking a march is only one of the ways. Mr. Lau Chin-sek. Thank you, Madam President. I nominated Mr. Zhang in the election, and I said I had expectations for him. Mr. Zhang is now the CE, and the expectation now becomes a demand. I'd like to talk about minimum wages and standard working hours. I believe during your walkabouts in the city, Mr. Zhang, you would know that many people have difficulty making ends meet. People can work more than 66 hours a week, and there are many of these people. And I also said how we could be inclusive for people with different political ideas, that you should not seek to revive the security or special branch, so that you can create a really open atmosphere for political discussion. I hope you can give me a specific answer. With regard to minimum wages and standard working hours, I said before, and I also said in the open, and also when I met you during my election campaign, I said the same thing to you, and that is there are already platforms for the employers and the employees to discuss. We hope that we can arrive at a certain consensus. We understand that if wages continue to go down, people would have a very difficult time. Therefore, in terms of government contracts and also government subsidized bodies, when they award contracts, they can stipulate minimum wages so as to protect the working public. But I believe these are very major issues. If they have to be acceptable to the entire society, and if indeed we want to legislate for them, I believe we need to achieve a consensus with all the parties. At the Labour Advisory Board, these are being discussed, and if necessary, we can discuss this at another level as well. But what I really want to say is we do need to achieve a consensus first on such important issues. And also at this juncture, we have to understand that a minimum wage may affect employment. Any measures at all should not affect the employment situation. I was reading out the concerns of the public. Unemployment ranks very high among those. And I have no intention to set up any government organ to give surveillance on people with different political ideas. Mr. Lau Chin-sek, he talked about a discussion of the matter at a different level. Can you let us know what kind of level you have in mind and what is the time frame? I think the important thing is for the LAB to discuss these issues first. If there is no success, then we can consider taking the next step. The LAB consists of employee and employer representatives, and we need to have a discussion among different parties. Let us say they just might arrive at a consensus. Mr. Sin Chung-kai. Madam President, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Zhang on his becoming the Chief Executive. Chief Executive, you place a lot of emphasis on EXCO-LegCo relationship. A month or so ago, the LegCo carried a motion supported by the big political parties here, and that is to give more of the proceeds of the exchange fund investment to government. It was not my phone. I'd like to ask what the administration will do to respond to this aspiration of the LegCo. CE, you will understand that in 1998, when you were the FS, you reduced taxes and it was very popular with the public. And then in 2003, Mr. Anthony Leung, the then FS, increased taxes. But if there is a bigger share from the foreign, the exchange fund investment proceeds for the government coffers, then we can reduce tax back to the level of 1998. I'd like to know how you can actively respond to that so that you can have a better EXCO-LegCo relationship and so that you can respond to the middle class wishes. Mr. Sin, I believe the relevant motion is not in line with what the public wants now, and that is they want a stable situation. Also, we have to try to find a way so that your platform, our platform, and the public's wishes can meet. As to whether we should now make use of the exchange fund investment proceeds, I find that hard to comply with, and I don't think that is the wishes of the public. So the important thing is we want to see how your wishes and our platform and the public's wishes tally. Actually, I read out the big concerns of the public, and none of them had to do with what you said. So we were arguing all the time. It is because you wanted something, but it did not necessarily reflect the public's views. We must do something so that what you want and what I do would respond to the wishes of the public, so that we can have the trust of the public, so that they will welcome what we do. I think in this regard, you and I both have to do more. Mr. Sin, maybe during the election campaign, the CEO was rather busy, so he was negligent with what we discussed. So we were not saying we want to make use of the exchange fund, but only the investment proceeds from the exchange fund. And I don't know whether during your survey you asked the public whether they were in favor of the motion we carried. Would that become part of the next CPU survey, please? And if the public would know that if there would be a bigger share of the proceeds from the exchange fund investment, they would understand that many of those concerns they expressed would be able to have the resources to do it. In your survey, you did not ask about this. And also in your survey, maybe you did not ask about 0708 universal suffrage. It could have come first in the list of concerns. So would you survey the public's views on whether they would like to have a bigger share of the exchange fund investment proceeds to be given to the government? I surveyed universal suffrage, but you also said that you wanted to ask us to make use of the exchange fund. I did not say anything wrong, but I would still stand by my view, and that is making use of the exchange fund would have an impact on the economy, and we should not do it lightly. This is my firm belief. It is not something I shall do. Mr. Tommy Zheng. Mr. Zhang, congratulations. On behalf of the catering constituency, I'd like to congratulate you on your becoming the CE. We have expectations for you, Mr. Zhang, because recently our sector has been given a hard time by the administration. You talk about a people-based governance, and you said you would base your policies on the public's wishes, but you left out something. The people place good food as the first priority. Now that you are the CE, I'd like to ask about the smoking ban. It would affect the mahjong parlors, karaoke lounges, and sauna parlors, etc. Would you consider giving them an exemption? You talked about central slaughtering of poultry. Actually, the administration has always been talking about regional slaughtering instead of central slaughtering. If there would be no live poultry in the markets, it would be so bad for the wet markets, and it would be so bad for the entire catering industry as well. So would you like to share with us your views on these two policies, please? With regard to the smoking ban, it has gone through very meticulous discussion and has been discussed here many times at LegCo, and we have done many surveys of the public's views. The policy reflects what the public want. As to implementation difficulties, I'm sure Mr. Zheng would be taking that up with the relevant departments. I myself would follow the public's views. I believe the policy as proposed reflect the public's views. The catering industry is one of the pillars for the success of our economy. I will certainly continue to support it, Mr. Zheng. Mr. Zheng, President, Mr. Zheng did not really survey the public's views on central slaughtering or regional slaughtering and whether anything bad would happen to the wet markets if there is no live poultry. Well, we have discussed this many, many times. I believe, as my colleagues, we would like to have more discussion and to see whether the public would be standing behind such a policy. Live poultry, of course, is something that would help the catering industry, but we also balance that against the risks involved. Our policy is very clear, but we are still importing live poultry into Hong Kong. I wish the present good situation will persist, but if there are signs that there would be bigger risks, that the public's health will be affected, then we will have to make other plans. I believe here in the chamber, a lot of discussion has taken place. We're all clear about the present situation, and we would like to encourage the implementation of regional and central slaughtering so that there would not be an outbreak of avian flu, or else would have to take stricter measures.
Dr. Raymond Ho. Thank you, Madam President. With your indulgence, I'd like to put a longer question, Madam President. Unemployment is of concern to the members of the public. The engineering sector has an unemployment rate of 300,000, twice that of the general unemployment. 5.7 for the general population. For ours, it is 14%. This is a very unhappy profession. We have about 1 million people affected. The government makes sure that $29 billion will be spent on infrastructure, but that doesn't help the matter. The engineers are worried about the jobs being at stake. Some engineers, even if they acquire the relevant status. Well, this is a very long one. Please put your question, Mr. Ho. I'm coming to that. Many graduates cannot even get into their profession. There is every likelihood that there would be a fault line developing. Mr. Tsang, and I hope that you will appreciate the predicament of the engineers. In relation to the former municipal council projects, how are you going to take these forward? How are you going to deliver your promises? The government's commitment to infrastructural development would remain unchanged. We have a large infrastructural development. We don't have a lot of small projects, and that doesn't provide many job opportunities for the professionals. I'd like to do more. First of all, we'd like to encourage private investment in not only infrastructural development, but also building development in order to create more job opportunities. The government would have a look at the small and medium-sized projects, in particular the projects left over from the municipal councils. These projects would be more popular with the professionals. We'd like to be able to fast-track some of these projects. Many times the projects are impeded by the requirement for recurrent expenditure. I try to overcome these difficulties so that we can get on with these projects. It may work out to be $29 billion, but we try to encourage more projects to be developed which will facilitate the professionals. Make it short this time, Mr. Ho. Madam President, Mr. Zhang referred to the municipal council projects. I heard from the government that it wouldn't be until 2008 that some of the projects would be embarked on. Will you fast-track some of the projects? I would fast-track the projects as much as possible, but I haven't seen the latest report. When I left the government, I was looking at this issue. I would review the situation within the next 2 months. My objective is to get on with the projects as soon as possible. Mr. Lau Kong-wah, Madam President, the people of Hong Kong attach great importance to the constitutional development. They also attach equal importance to prosperity and stability. In terms of constitutional arrangement, the difference between a statesman, what's the difference between a politician and 政治家 in Chinese, or 政客? Well, English is the same. I think you have explained very clearly in Chinese. I don't think I should be belaboring on this particular point. It would be far better to have an academic to explain the terms in Chinese. In terms of constitutional arrangement, In Chinese, 政治家 politician and 政客 also politician in English, there may be some difference. How do you perceive the difference between the two as a politician yourself? I don't think I'm with you. I think you're going round and round in circle. I don't think I can get to the heart of your question. The one thing I want to say is the constitutional development is an unnatural development. We should use our common sense. We should not look at it from the politician's point of view. We should proceed in accordance with the basic law and also the wishes of the general public. And we have to have regard to the central government's views and also the provisions inside the basic law. It doesn't matter whether someone is a politician or not. I think we have to approach the issue with common sense, and this is the attitude with which I approach the issue. Dr. Young Sum. Thank you, Madam President. The Chief Executive talked about in effective and robust governance, policies cannot be delayed. You went on your walkabout to the Western District. There was a raging torrent on the rainy days. What effective measures do you have to resolve the flooding problem in Western? Well, there was a torrential downpour. It was a once in 100 years kind of downpour. And we also had a high tide at the time, and the water could not really be drained off quickly enough. There were people who were adversely affected. There were shops that were affected, but not to a severe extent. We are getting on with the massive infrastructural development. Tendering is going on. Let's hope that the next time will happen in 100 years. When it happens, I'm sure the flooding will certainly be better mitigated. The damage wasn't really too bad. The drainage system was really good enough. I saw some flooding, but in Western District, the problem wasn't really that serious. I have instructed the Drainage Services Department to get on with the infrastructural development and bring this to Category B for construction. This is only once in 100 years. Let's hope that the next downpour will not happen until the infrastructural project has been completed. Mr. Young Sum, maybe the Chief Executive didn't do his homework well enough. You talked about once in 100 years. In Western District, it's always been prone to flooding. In Kennedy Town, in Western District, the drainage systems have been really become dilapidated. We'd like to have a large outfall cutting across Central and Western, but this will not materialize until 2007. Will you advance this particular project? Indeed, I have talked to the DSD, and they are trying to fast-track this particular project. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Thank you, Madam President. My heartfelt congratulations, Mr. Donald Tsang. When you were elected, Hong Kong was pouring down. Today, I'm glad to see that the sky has cleared up. We haven't seen a clear blue sky for some days. Let's hope that this bodes well for the future. Please come to the question, Mr. Lam. Thank you, Madam President. The economic situation is something very dear to our heart. In the recent past, the economic situation has turned around. We have to develop our economy to bring in investors and to bring in the tax dollars. I mean, this is something that the business sector is very concerned about. In terms of taxation, Chief Executive, how are you going to broaden the hitherto narrow tax base? The business sector would be very supportive of any initiatives to boost the economy. But for measures that would affect the SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, like the minimum wage, that would be detrimental to them, I hope that you would think twice about them. I fully realize that there are divergent views in relation to minimum wage. I hope that both the employer and the employee will understand the situation. We are also concerned about the vulnerability of the SMEs. We like to find a balance between various sectors. As to the investment situation in Hong Kong, it is pretty favorable right now. As to tax concessions, and this is something for the Financial Secretary. If the economy is growing at the anticipated rate of 4 to 4.5%, the taxation would be much better. I'm sure that that would give us more room for the Financial Secretary to consider some tax reduction. The FS's budget also made reference to that. I'm just picking up on what he said. Mr. Lam, CE, in terms of raising revenue and cutting expenditure, how can you strike a balance? We have done a pretty good job in cutting expenditure. We have reduced the size of the civil service from 180,000 to 160,000. We've also keep on top of the increase in salaries. And after these slimming down procedures, the results would be sustainable. With a pickup in the economy, I'm sure that we have to be careful in our expenditure, while at the same time we have to reward the relevant people. And this will not be possible unless financially we are financially good enough. Chief Executive, it is now 2 minutes past 4. Some domestic affairs took up about 10 minutes. There are 37 members who are waiting to put questions. Would you be prepared to answer 6 more to take the number to 18? All right, Professor Patrick Lau. Thank you, Madam President. I'll be faster than Dr. Raymond Ho. I won't be shoe shining, Mr. Tsang. I've got loads of questions for you. I heard what Mr. Tsang said. He said that people are most concerned about employment. Mr. Tsang, I know when I talked to you that you thought the best way to improve the unemployment situation for the engineering sector would be to launch more projects. You talked about the Tamar site and also the government headquarters and electrical projects. I am supportive of this idea, but there are some reports to say that you need the electrical support for this particular project, and you have some doubts about it. Mr. Zhang, in terms of the Tamar site development, do you have any concrete plan? Do you think that you have to consider how best we can improve the employment situation in Hong Kong? Concerning the Tamar site, my position remains unchanged. It's exactly the same as what I told you. We have to review to find out whether there is any further room for maneuver. You don't have to be worried about it. I got a letter from the President to ask me to review the Tamar site project. I think we have to consider whether there are any problems with financing. The sites, the important premium sites where the government headquarters are located can be vacated, and that would be good. And in terms of financing, we have to find out whether we're going to experience any difficulties. I'll be talking to the Financial Secretary, but I've given the undertaking that I would review this particular project. Mr. Lau. Well, Madam President, I hope that the Chief Executive will let us have the answer within these 2 years. Let us have a timetable.
We have done quite sufficient preparation work for the project. It now really depends on financing, and we'll have to see some results in the budget next year. I have to leave some room for maneuver for the FS. I believe the wishes of ourselves and yourselves are the same, but we need the money. We'll try to see where we can find it. Ms. Audrey Yu. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Zhang, in your introduction, you mentioned that a survey was done with regard to Article 23 legislation. You said that it ranked 18. Now, that might go to reflect that national security is now very well protected. But recently, when you met a group of EC members, you said that the bill submitted to LegCo for passing in 2003 had loopholes, and it was not good enough to protect national security. But you have already said, I understand, that during the coming 2 years, you will not revive legislation for Article 23. But I believe the public would like to know what the loopholes are in your eyes. And if there were loopholes, why is it that on the 5th of July 2003, the entire EXCO stood behind the CE to say that on the 9th of July that year, the bill would be passed by LegCo? I don't think I need to talk about history. I believe everybody knows it. As to the imperfections in the bill, it is not just myself. Ms. Audrey Yu, yourself, and Article 45 concern group and other people also said that the bill was inadequate. I could see inadequacies in the bill myself. But the important thing is we don't need to discuss this anymore now, and the public do not want us to talk about this. I don't think we should dwell on it. In the coming 2 years, I will not talk about this unless for very special reasons. Ms. Yu, I said that the bill was not good enough, but I was not saying that it is not adequate in protecting national security. I was saying that it was inadequate in protecting human rights and freedom. So my view is very different from yours, Mr. Zhang. I was asking you in what ways the bill was not good enough for national security. Mr. Zhang, you would know that with regard to the definition of national security, the central authorities and Hong Kong have very different views. Mr. Ching Chang's arrest goes to show exactly that point. So could you explain here how Hong Kong people, especially members of the media, can be protected? I think the biggest protection is that in the coming 2 years, there will not be a revival of discussion on Article 23. As to the next bill to be submitted, that will be for discussion later. I understand that to legislate for Article 23 is the duty of the CE, but now I do not have time for it, and I don't think the community is ready for that, and that is why it ranks only 18 in the survey. That is why I don't want to spend any time on it now, unless there are very special things that would happen. I believe this is the best protection. At least you don't have to worry for the next 2 years. And I understand it is the SARG's duty to legislate for Article 23, but we can do it after 2007. So you need not worry in the coming 2 years, and it is not necessary for us to discuss it now. What about Mr. Ching Chang's arrest? That cannot wait for 2 years. Is that a new question? It's not a supplementary. It looks like the CE can be the LegCo president. He can see that this is not a follow-up. But I would always ask members whether they have anything to add. So CE, would you have anything to add, and you can decide how to give an answer? I would be very happy to give an answer, but I was just saying that it was not a follow-up question. Mr. Ching Chang's arrest is something of concern to the public. It is also my own concern. With regard to the professionals and friends of the media, I think I understand they have very strong views. But when we hope that other people would respect our legal system, we should also respect the mainland's legal system. Last Thursday, I was in Beijing, and I took the first opportunity to express my views to Mr. Liao Hui. He was very positive. When I talked to him, he showed that he understood the entire matter, and he said that he would, as soon as possible, handle the matter with the relevant authorities. He said that they would act according to the law. This was what he promised me to do, and I believe that very soon we will have some results. Mr. James Tian. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Zhang, on behalf of the Liberal Party, I would like to again formally congratulate you for having been elected the new Chief Executive. As you said, Mr. Chief Executive, you said that Hong Kong people are most concerned about employment and economy. This is what our concern is as well, and it is also we are best at. In terms of the cooperation between the Liberal Party and the executive authorities, we understand that there is the EXCO, the Commission on Strategic Development, and also there would be political assistance. But I believe the most important thing is when you draw up policies, you have to have our support, whether it be food labeling or smoking ban. You must allow us to have consultations to and fro before you decide on policies. I'd like to know whether you think that the present approach is going to work. Well, I think it is. Whenever there are new policies, we would have sufficient communication with government-friendly or allied parties, and we'll also communicate fully with members of very different views. We need your votes. We need your support, Mr. Tian. We have to work hard at that. We understand that. Mr. Tian. Madam President, Mr. Zhang did not answer my question. I was asking about the process, whether the representative LegCo members would be fully consulted. In other words, there would be a lot of liaison. Instead of you would propose a policy to increase red light jumping penalty before you tell Ms. Miriam Lau. Well, when you look at our past approach, you would understand that there would be a lot of consultation. But of course, when you did not like what we were proposing, you would regard that not as consultation. But as you are saying, I would certainly explore issues with you. And I hope that whenever policies are rolled out here for implementation, we would have the support of allied parties. And certainly before that, we have to arrive at a consensus. Now we're already working on certain policies, Mr. Tin. And I cannot say, let us start all over again. But whenever there are new policies from now on, my colleagues and I will certainly hope to consult you fully so that we can recommend them to the LegCo. Mr. Chengmen Kwang. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Zhang, you said that you would take concrete actions to improve the relationship between the EXCO and the LegCo. Mr. Zhang, with regard to your concrete actions, would they be different from Mr. Tong's? In the past, there was a very nervous, a tense relationship. One of the most important reasons is that LegCo's opinions were not respected. So would you promise now, if the LegCo carries a motion by bicameral voting as the government, would you respect it and implement it as part of your policies? I think by means of concrete actions, this is what I'm doing. I assumed office on Saturday, and this is only my second day in this office, and I'm already here. I hope this shows my sincerity. I hope that within the coming 2 years, I would have more opportunities to communicate with you. I hope that all the new policies will be supported by you. Mr. Zhang, as I was saying just now, your platform and our platform, let us not insist who is always right and who is always wrong. Let us all listen to the public. I listed the public's concerns for you in my introduction. Those are the public's voices. We must look at the public's wishes instead of our own wishes. If a motion carried by LegCo is in line with the public's wishes, we will certainly listen very carefully and try our best to accept it. But it must be premised on public opinion. If it is just a motion carried by LegCo with a lot of emotions, then that's a different matter. Let us not talk about the past. I will work within the framework of public opinion. I will formulate my policies according to those priorities. And I hope the LegCo will work with the same framework. If that's the case, there would be so few arguments between us, and there would be a much higher opportunity and possibility for the EXCO to carry through your policies. You are an advisory body representing public opinion, and will certainly listen to your views. Mr. Zhang, Madam President, after all, who should adjudicate what is mainstream public opinion? If Mr. Zhang, you think that the LegCo is already a representative body and the directly elected members are returned by the public and functional constituency members represent many different sectors, if even after a split voting or bicameral voting system, the motion is still carried, then is it up to you to adjudicate whether it represents public opinion? And can you accept that kind of motion as representing public opinion and good for implementation. Well, I'm sure that kind of motion would be very authoritative. But because of the constitutional setup, the final decision rests with the SARG. But I would certainly respect your views. I don't want to see a situation where a motion carried by LegCo will not be implemented by the SARG. I don't want that to happen at all. Mr. Tam Yu-chung, Madam President, thank you very much. I would not bootlick Mr. Zhang, but I would not demote him to CS4A either. Let me talk about livelihood. During your election campaign, Mr. Zhang, you visited the districts to understand public opinion, but you might not have been to a hospital in the deep of the night. At the general outpatient clinics, a lot of elderly people would be queuing up already in the small hours. Some of them are chronically ill as well. There may be a rain, there may be strong gusts of wind, and they have to queue up for 4 or 5 hours before dawn comes. And they are queuing up for general outpatient clinic services. I'd like to ask what kind of thinking you have in order to improve the situation. Mr. Zhang, would you also go to the hospital in the deep of the night in order to feel for yourself what it is like? With regard to medical services, I have more or less looked into it. With regard to outpatient services, elderly people do depend very heavily on it. But sometimes they may not go there for actual treatment of illnesses, but they may go there for psychological comfort. You asked me whether I would go to such a hospital. Maybe you and I can arrange for a visit. You can select some of the clinics to show me the situation, and you will see the same elderly people going to different clinics, and they may go in a group, and then they have Chinese tea in the morning together. I'm not saying every one of them is like that, but some of them are like that. And I think it is right for us to look into the best way to make use of our medical services. I think Dr. Yok Chow is also worried about this as to whether there is any abuse of our medical system and whether it meets the public's needs. Mr. Tam, Madam President, maybe Mr. Zhang has not been to such a hospital. He seems to think that the elderly people have a good time. Well, I was there. I was at the Madam Peel Hospital. So it was not a light moment, Mr. Zhang. It's not that they get a disc and then they go to Chinese tea in the morning. It's not like that at all. But I would very happily go on such a visit with you. Now the public are very concerned and worried because it seems they would have to pay a heavier price, and it seems the quality is going down. What is your solution? Well, I think the quality has not suffered. We have not seen that, but there is certainly a tight situation because of the financing problem. This is a big issue that we cannot shirk in the coming 2 years, and medical financing is an issue for the whole community. Every year, we are spending 13% to 14% of our budget on medical service delivery. There would also be a shoot up because of the aging population problem. I think this is really a difficult issue, but it seems we are not seeing any deterioration of quality yet. The hospital authority has its own problems, and we'll have to tackle them step by step. Medical service is one of the big issues vis-a-vis livelihood. If we need to improve our clinics, as I said, I would very happily take that up with you.
Last question, Mr. KK Fong. Thank you, Madam President. I can catch the last train. Congratulations, Mr. Zhang, on being elected. Mr. Zhang, you strike me as someone attaching importance to free economy. Maybe you haven't appreciated enough the difficulties of the grassroots people. When you were FS or CS, we had light tech, high skill work, But for the 40 euros, 50 euros with poor education, the assistance given to them is nowhere near enough. The government set up the Commission to tackle poverty. We thought that the government does have the resolve to tackle poverty. But the FS is the chair of the Commission to tackle poverty. It took a long time before we realized that the revenue of the millions of dollars coming from the personalized registration number will be devoted to the poor, and this is not really enough. So as far as the SAR government is concerned, is it giving enough support to the Commission to tackle poverty? So Mr. Zhang, in terms of poverty alleviation, what is your philosophy and how much support and what resources are going to be devoting to the Commission to make sure that it does do a good enough job? I don't think it's a matter of resources. You simply cannot throw resources at lifting people out of poverty. The question is how we can increase the number of job opportunities through economic development so that people can have a more decent life, and that's the way to go. If Mr. Fong has any particular suggestions, do please give them to Mr. Tang. We may increase taxation, but we cannot throw money at the problem of poverty and get results. I'm sure that collectively we should be able to come up with something to help Hong Kong. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is a problem. We have people coming out from the mainland, and they have very, very poor bargaining position, and they have poor education. It doesn't matter to me whether these people can get high-paid job when they first arrive in Hong Kong. What's more important to me is whether they would be able to rise the social ladder after 5 years. Mr. Fong, I don't think we should tackle poverty through financial means, and this is not the intention of Mr. Henry Tang and all the intention of the people of Hong Kong. It's not a matter of a free economy or not, it's a matter of whether it is effective or not. Mr. Fong, Chief Executive, resources don't really mean money alone. They would mean job opportunities, types of jobs, and also whether the government has any poverty policies. That's what I mean by resources. It took about 8 to 9 months before the Financial Secretary managed to find a few $1 million for this purpose. CE, you just took up the post. Do you have any philosophies regarding tackling poverty? You don't have to go into minute detail about the types of measures, but do you have any philosophy there? I think you must have faith in Mr. Henry Tang, who's in charge of this task. In terms of the construction industry, we have to make sure that projects can be embarked on as soon as possible to alleviate the unemployment situation. The underprivileged, those suffering from disabilities, we have to help them so that they would not fall below the poverty line, and we can adjust the policies, fine-tune the policies to make sure that the wealth disparity can be improved. We need the collective wisdom of Mr. Tang's Commission. In individual policy areas, we can certainly do more where the problems are particularly serious. Thank you very much, CE. You have answered questions from 18 LegCo members. There are some members, or 19 of them, who failed to put questions to the Chief Executive. They'd like to see you here more often and stay longer so that we can put questions to you. Would members please rise? The Chief Executive is now leaving the chamber. I now adjourn the Council until 11 a.m. on Wednesday, June the 29th, 2005.